The writer T.E. Lawrence wrote these words that have stayed with me since I first read them. All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night, in the dusty recesses of their minds, wake up in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, but they may act their dream with open eyes to make it possible. This episode is about dreaming during the day. It's about thinking big, having a vision so compelling that you cannot help but pursue it, even when the odds seem impossible, even when the path forward is unclear, and even when the people around you think you've lost your mind. There's a place in life for incremental progress, for learning steadily, improving daily, compounding marginal gains over time. That approach is powerful in many ways and should never be dismissed. But that's not the focus of this episode. This episode is about those defining moments when progress demands a bold move, a moonshot. It's about recognizing that there are times when the best way forward isn't another careful, measured step. Because as the former British Prime Minister David Lloyd George famously said, you can't cross a chasm in two small jumps. I'm Osita Bala, and this is the Better Fun. On my first trip to Dubai, I found myself like most first-time visitors, instantly impressed by the city's magnificence. Nearly everywhere I went, I was greeted by marvels, such as the imposing Burj Al Arab, the sprawling Dubai Mall, and so on and so forth. Many who visit Dubai leave the country wondering how a city of this scale and ambition was conjured up in a desert. If you're looking for proof of what foresight, vision, and an absolute refusal to be constrained by obstacles can achieve, Dubai is your answer. Much of Dubai's transformation is owed to the vision of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai, who looked at a stretch of desert coastline and saw not what it was, but what it could become. Sheikh Mohammed did not wait for permission from geography or circumstance. He simply got to work, and the world watched, often in disbelief, as that vision took shape. Like the ruler of Dubai, another world leader that has left an indelible mark on history with a powerful vision is former U.S. President John F. Kennedy. On May 25, 1961, before a joint session of Congress, President Kennedy declared that America would put man on the moon before the end of the decade.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space.
Traveling to the moon may seem like a historical footnote today, but in 1961, it was the wildest goal imaginable. The dream was so ambitious that some of the people running NASA, America's civilian space agency, privately doubted that it could be achieved. In fact, the technology required to bring about the vision did not even exist, and the engineering challenges were just staggering. And yet on July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center and began a journey of 240,000 miles to the moon. 4 days later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the lunar surface. And as Armstrong took his first step, he uttered the immortal words that would echo through history. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. People sometimes ask what the point of the moon landing was. It was a scientific and engineering triumph, but it was also something more. It planted in the hearts of men and women around the world the belief that with courage, ingenuity, and will, the impossible could indeed be made possible. This capacity to look into the future, dare greatly, and take moonshots has been one of the great engines of human progress. For roughly 95% of human history, people lived as foragers and hunter-gatherers. They moved where the food was, they lived from day to day, and they had little reason to think much about the future. But around 10 to 12,000 years ago, something changed. Humans began to domesticate plants and animals in what historians call the Neolithic or agricultural revolution. People settled in one place to tend crops and raise livestock. This shift from foraging and farming was one of the most consequential turning points in the history of our species. One of the reasons the agricultural revolution accelerated civilization is that it made the future profoundly important for the first time. In his seminal book *Sapiens*, the historian Yuval Noah Harari observed that with the onset of famine, worries about the future became major players in the theater of the human mind. To have a plentiful harvest, a farmer must prepare months in advance, choosing seeds, reading the skies, conserving water, and protecting the soil. The future was no longer abstract. It was something you could shape with your choices today. That instinct to read the horizon, to prepare for what is coming, and to build towards a better future has defined the world's most influential leaders, builders, and inventors ever since. This instinct is just as relevant to our lives as it is to nations and civilizations. The book CEO Excellence, which examined the practices of the world's top chief executives, identified making big moves as one of the defining mindsets that separates the best leaders from the rest. Like President Kennedy, the most effective CEOs make bold strategic moves early and often in their tenures. Conversely, CEOs who make too few moonshot-sized bets or make them too late fall behind. The bold ones shape industries. The cautious ones are shaped by them. That said, the authors of CEO Excellence make an important distinction that is worth emphasizing. Boldness is not the same as recklessness. Taking a moonshot does not mean charging blindly into the unknown. It means understanding the risk-reward trade-offs clearly, stress testing the downside scenarios, and only forging ahead when you are prepared to live with the worst-case outcome. Courage without judgment is just disguised recklessness. I'll be exploring the 3 mindsets that I believe are essential for daring greatly. The first mindset is a refusal to be stopped by obstacles. Consider Palm Jumeirah, one of Dubai's most iconic achievements. Dubai faced a fundamental constraint. It had very little natural beachfront, which severely limited its potential as a tourism and luxury real estate destination. But rather than accepting that constraint as permanent, Sheikh Mohammed backed a radical idea: to build a palm-shaped island in the sea itself. Engineers dredged millions of tons of sand from the Persian Gulf, constructed the island from scratch, and in so doing added over 70 kilometers of new coastline to a city that had almost none. What was a geographical limitation became a global landmark. The Panama Canal tells a similar story. When the United States took over the project under President Theodore Roosevelt, the challenges were almost overwhelming. Deadly outbreaks of malaria and yellow fever, brutal jungle conditions, and mountainsides that repeatedly collapsed during excavation. A lesser leader would have walked away, but President Roosevelt wasn't about to retreat from his moonshot. Instead, builders of the canal controlled the disease, redesigned the project using a revolutionary lock system, and mobilized an engineering operation unprecedented in scale. In 1914, they completed one of the greatest infrastructure achievements in human history. Here's another moonshot that is transforming lives on the African continent. Alhaji Aliko Dangote, the preeminent Nigerian entrepreneur, had a vision to build a world-class oil refinery in Nigeria so that the country could finally refine its own crude rather than exporting it raw and importing the finished fuel at a premium. The obstacles were immense. Unreliable infrastructure, no deep-sea port capable of receiving the necessary equipment, and no reliable power supply. Alhaji Dangote was undeterred by these impediments. He built the port. He built the power plant. He acquired hundreds of tanker trucks to distribute the fuel once it was refined. He didn't just build a refinery. He built the entire ecosystem required to make the refinery viable. Taking moonshots means refusing to see obstacles as signals to turn back, but rather as challenges to overcome on the path forward. The author Piers Anthony captured the spirit of this mindset well. He wrote, and I quote, "Being terrified but going ahead and doing what needs to be done. That's courage. The one who feels no fear is a fool, and the one who lets fear rule him is a coward." The second mindset that's essential for daring greatly is an abundance mentality, seeing the world as full of opportunities, not constraints. In his book No Limits, the author John C. Maxwell wrote, and I quote, "Abundance thinking encourages you to make choices that will expand your possibilities. Scarcity thinking causes you to make choices that will diminish your potential. Abundance says go, and you will find the resources. Scarcity says hold on to what you have, Ultimately, our perspective determines whether we accept the world as it is or work to create the one we want. When President Kennedy declared that America will reach the moon, the technology needed to accomplish that goal did not even exist. Yet he named the destination and trusted the ingenuity of human beings. Walt Disney also demonstrated the same mindset on a different domain. His vision for what would become the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando was staggering in its ambitious, a vast immersive world of entertainment unlike anything that had existed before. To bring this dream to fruition, his team drained swamps, built roads and utilities from scratch, and developed entirely new technologies for the park experience. When Disney shared the vision with a senior executive in his company, the executive objected and noted that it would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to achieve. Disney simply looked at him and said, "Can't you keep your mind on the subject and away from inessentials?" For Disney, the cost was a logistical detail. The vision was the point. As the author John C. Maxwell puts it, when our attitudes outdistance our abilities, even the impossible becomes possible. The third mindset that's essential for daring greatly, and perhaps the one that determines whether the first two amount to anything at all, is a bias for action. In other words, the willingness to do what it takes to bring a vision to life. My favorite articulation of this mindset comes from a speech President Theodore Roosevelt gave in 1910, titled Citizenship in a Republic. He said, and I quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat." That was a long quote, I agree, but if I had to boil it down to 3 words, I'd say be caught trying. Alternatively, I could say be a doer. Some people believe that action should follow certainty, that before we move, we need clarity, structure, and a fully mapped out plan. But that's not how progress actually works. You don't wait until you have the whole plan. You begin, and in the act of beginning, you learn, you adjust, you refine your direction, not from theory, but from experience. This doesn't mean being reckless or betting everything on a single throw. It means being willing to test ideas, to experiment, to take intelligent risks, and to treat setbacks not as endpoints, but as data. The world-renowned entrepreneur and founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, said, and I quote, "Every interesting thing I've ever done, every important thing I've ever done, every beneficial thing I've ever done has been through a cascade of experiments and mistakes and failures." The moment we act, fear begins to lose its grip, because action creates momentum, and momentum builds the belief that further action is possible. So, if you've been waiting to take your moonshot, this is your signal. Move. The path won't fully reveal itself, but it will open just enough for your next step, and then the next. That's it for this episode, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. Keep the faith and keep getting better.